I'm finally here. The Kabula, the source of immortality. Time to take it. Time to take it. Time to take it. How am I supposed to take this? It's a freaking tree. Kabula is the name of this game, and also this tree. This tree right here. And this tree gives you immortality, meaning that if you die, you just come back to life. You're playing as these deranged heroes from our world who have magically been teleported to this high fantasy-esque island. This is a 2 to 4 player adventure, competitive RPG, just filled to the brim with satire. Like, okay, let me show you. Verbatim, this says, fight your way through monsters, adventures, and unbelievable stupidity. Verbatim, it says, unbelievable stupidity. So let's go on this adventure of unbelievable stupidity. Okay, real quick how to play. So you're all controlling a hero, each complete with their own stats and personalities, just like a video game. To win the game, you want to be the one doing the killing blow on this Herald, this big monster that's just protecting the island. But if you do that right off the bat, remember, this Kabula will give everything immortality, so it'll die and then just come back to life. So first, you gotta go steal that Kabula for yourself, and then you can kill this big monster Herald thing. You can't do this right away. You need to get stronger and have a social media following. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard that right. You need to get popular by maxing out one of your character's personalities by doing events and killing monsters. Then you can flip it over, get that card ability, and be able to walk over to the Kabula and take it. This guy, the Herald, is going to be constantly doing something too. He will have a deck of cards that you flip over, kind of like an event deck, which constantly moves him around and influences the island. After you're done with that Herald card, then our heroes go. On your turn, you just do actions from cards in front of you, like from these items or from these basic things called moving and resting. You can do as many actions as you want, just paying the parts cost for it, which is like specific mana, but called body parts like legs, guts, and butts. So you want to move, you spend 1 leg, move 2 spaces. If you do an action that is red, well that means after you do it, you end your turn. The game is a little sandboxy. You walk around doing encounters and dungeons, which can give you money and popularity. And then you can use your money to buy things, like going into a city and looking at stuff to buy. There's going to be these monsters on the island that you can also kill, called Familio. Kill these to get stronger, but the cool thing is that when you kill one, it comes back to life if the Kabula tree is active, and you keep this Familio as a pet that gives you even more stuff. But the sandbox doesn't last for long, because when anyone takes the Kabula, immortality is turned off for everything on the island. No more playing around, and you throw out these Herald event cards. The Herald is now attacking the heroes in a fit of rage. Now it's a rush to kill the Herald if you hold the Kabula, or if you don't hold the Kabula, kill the guy holding it and pick it up yourself. Then kill the Herald yourself to win the game. So that's the bare bones of the game. You do actions every turn to improve your character, and eventually the Kabula will get stolen, triggering that final fight where you have that showdown against this Herald. You kill this while you hold this, you win the game. But if everyone dies after immortality is turned off, well, then everyone loses the game. Okay, so now on to the review. And starting with the pros, this game just looks and screams adventure RPG. Like, there's even cities on this map. So you can go to a city and just go into town and shop and rest. If that doesn't scream RPG, I don't know what does. Component-wise, there's these thick boards for the players and for the Herald. And the art here looks great. You got these different character arts with the flashy heralds, all on this map full of ridges, mountains, rivers, and cities. Each hero has this 3D mini that makes them fairly easy to distinguish. And you even got a water dragon mini. Oh wait, okay, that one got broken in the mail. Okay, let's not use it for this review. Yay, look, water dragon standee, that still looks good. Oh, and there's the items, which you get so many of in these decks with little repeats. There's all sorts of stuff to just equip your heroes with to just get you into this silly island romping RPG. Just like any RPG, you want to pick your character, and there's 4 to pick from that all feel wildly different here. Each character is going to get their own starting items. They all have their own one special ability, health, parts, all rounded out with an actual theme behind the character. Your character backstory will really set the scene for what to expect with your character. Say we're playing as Isolde, who, a young mother abandoned by her lazy partner after another unwanted kid. Yeah, so then as you're playing Isolde, you start with a bib, and you can throw dirty nappies at opponents to do damage. This really starts to make more sense when you look at her personality pass. Does she want to be romantic and just settle down with the shopkeeper? Or maybe she wants to be a little more practical or creepy and become a warrior goddess or a pirate explorer. And in all that art, her kids are present, so I guess she's commanding them the whole time. These aren't just pure flavor though. You can see that these all have abilities linked to them. When you start progressing these, you unlock the front ability, giving you more options. But things start to get really spicy when you get the card to 3 hashtags, flipping it over. Maybe now you have a new ability to pacify opponents. Or you can literally arm your kids with Nerf guns, have them move around the island, and shooting opponents. There's 3 different build paths and personalities with the heroes, giving you so much possible strategy and silliness. Maybe the easily frustrated Jessica just becomes a cannibal who heals when attacking heroes now. Or she is just done with people and just wants to live in nature by easily taming wild monsters. The personalities mixed with the starting items and abilities really make each pickable character different. Jessica is aggressive with leather boots that ask her to be angry. Then there's Clayton, who tries to be big brain by using brains to talk people into not attacking him. But it's not just a gentle romp around the island, because this Herald is going to be running around and causing mayhem right from the start. There's the more beginner-friendly one, the Water Dragon, who does a little bit of everything, from attacking heroes, poisoning you, stealing money from you, etc, etc. Then there's Floppy, who is this crazy horse who just likes to constantly start fires on the board. The fire damages everyone but him, meaning that when you move on it, you take damage, and then you're forced to clean it up, and that's a really fun thing to play around. The last guy, Pepitholi, this guy hates humans and loves to just disrupt your positions and interact with your social media following. Each Herald has their own defensive schemes and attacks for when the Kabula is stolen too, meaning that you'll have 3 completely different final boss fights. Like, look at all those abilities. And for these Heralds, with their decks of cards, they're chock full of flavor text. And this is where we want to commend Kabula so much for having flavor text everywhere. It's everywhere. It's on every single card in this game. You got flavor text on all the Familio, the dungeon cards, the encounter cards, these 2 decks of item cards, and even all your character stuff has flavor text too. The game is just throwing at you all these silly, goofy, fun role-playing elements for you to imagine. Let's go to this encounter, where you have a wise choice. You reach a fork in the road. A sign points at the Forbidden Forest to the left and the Dungeon of Doom to your right. Since you're not an idiot, you turn around and find the closest pub. Yeah, and then a brawl starts at the tavern, so you can just, well, drink people's drinks while they're distracted or steal someone's money. And this is not purely for story 2, because whatever you pick is going to influence your personality. But at the end of the day, the game has so much flavor text that Kabula wants you to have fun with these stories. So now let's get a little bit away from the silliness of the game and onto the mechanics. We can't escape the silliness entirely though, because this mechanic here is body part spending. Now this is where you're spending body parts to do actions, which is incredibly thematic and also some fun management here. There's the very basic, how many times do you want to expend your resources before you rest and end a turn? But then there's so many different parts to be doing this with. There's 5 different parts that all specialize in different things. There's one main way to get more, which is you attack monsters, and the damage you deal to them is the parts you're stealing. So now you really want to watch what to prey on as you gauge the monsters on the board or the ones that can come out. This is surprisingly fast progression that just gets you so many more goodies to activate new weapons, or to just keep you going longer before you have to rest. We also like the addition of Rage, which is more nuanced to spending parts. Whenever you get attacked, you can just move anything from right to left, meaning that you can just become enraged by getting hit, which totally makes sense. We really like how the game made Rage a specific cost for some actions, adding even more flavor but forcing you to manage a little more carefully to use these actions. Plus the fact that you're moving body parts from right to left when attacked means that you're just so angry that you just don't need to rest sometimes. Now let's get to the other monsters on the island, aka the Familio. Now these will not only give you body parts when you attack them, but when you kill them, you get to keep them. It's your pet because remember, everything respawns. So it'll respawn and this becomes yours now. You flip it over and now this bald eagle is just on your side. It gives you 3 or 4 new actions that you can use. Your Familio will actually have a turn of its own after all the heroes go, which really makes it feel like this companion that you'd find in a computer video game RPG. Just like you, the Familio is fueled by parts, so you gotta share a little and supply it with some of your used parts. But hey, it's worth it, because frequently the new actions can give you just more attacks on your opponents, or give you some defensive bonuses. Sometimes you just want to have your Familio hang tight with you on the board to protect your hero. Sometimes you just want to send it out to go attack your opponents. It's up to you. Fortunately, counterplay against your opponent's annoying Familio is pretty easy. You can just kill them and they're gone. This guy right here, the McYummy, just cracked this up so hard. This is a Familio that is a triple cheeseburger that is walking around, but if you tame him, he comes back to life, you can use him to cheddar walk across the board, spreading nausea on your opponents. You can just get people to throw out more by giving them more nausea, and that does more damage. So yeah, certain abilities like the McYummy's defensive cheap ingredients, or even just the starting item to fling poo, these can all grant nausea on enemies. And this just makes you feel worse when hurt, where if you take damage, you lose 1 additional damage for each nausea you have. So nausea is like a wound that you can stack multiple times, meaning that damage ramp can start getting insane. For the heroes, they can rest and get rid of the nausea, that makes sense. But the monsters, including the Herald, never rest, meaning that they just continue to yak and puke when you attack them for loads of damage. And this means that the Heralds can die really fast if they have a lot of nausea on them. And this is where Kabula's progression just really impressed us. It can start off seeming like a slower sandboxy game at first, right? You got all of these 4 cities you can do actions in, there's these dungeons you want to clear. But in reality, Kabula is a 30 minutes per player game that holds true to time. It really is the pedal to metal to kill this Herald before you know it. So you can't just be going around meandering and just farming cool items for long. These items are sick though, which are the power spikes that go hand in hand with getting more parts. If you get a rare item, oh sheesh, these are really strong. Even if you don't find an item necessarily, you can always just buy one at the shop to really help you. These items frequently just give double to triple your action possibility, giving you ranged attacks, ways to heal yourself, or even loopable attacks like this axe. The moment you get these items, you really want to start strategizing around them, whether you build around them to get parts for them, or just sell them at a shop and buy newer items. Everyone is just getting stronger and stronger, and this strength stays even if you die. Even if you die, yeah, because remember this Kabula tree? It's keeping everyone immortal, so you just respawn. Not a big deal if you die, but you will lose your Familio though. He doesn't want to follow you around anymore. So since everyone is just getting stronger and stronger, they're all eyeing that center Kabula to see when they want to take it and just start closing out the game. When you take the actual Kabula, it's a part that gives a bonus to 1 action, so that can be 1 attack with a +2 damage on it. And if you are just a bunch of cowards and refuse to close the game out, well then the Herald will run out of cards, take matters into its own hands, and try running you off itself, so that's not good for you heroes. This progression of Kabula actually is this unique win condition that we're surprised is not in more games, where you're playing this game of chicken to see who will take this Kabula first. Because when you take it, well, the Herald's gonna attack you and all the other heroes are gonna attack you, and respawns are turned off. It's go time. And it's not like you can calculate when to do this Kabula grab perfectly, because there's some simple luck connected to a bunch of the attacks. Frequently when you attack something, the game will ask you to roll dice to see if you hit a certain body part. If you roll something that they have a defensive ability for, your attack gets altered. So when you're attacking the Heralds, it doesn't matter how statted you are, because sometimes you will roll a certain way, and then the monster can just evade your attack or counterattack and kill you. But if everyone dies, then everyone loses, so you definitely want to balance the scumbaggery here. Kabula is not a semi-co-op, it's still a competitive game with very little real working together, but in that epic Herald fight finale, you may just loosen up on the backstabbing to make sure your hopes are utterly dashed. The Heralds can do a lot of damage if you're not careful. There's room for player interaction even before that final fight though. There's a lot of mobility with clever ways to move around the map, like paying for a train to move between cities, or how about dying on purpose so you can spawn in the middle of the map, the Kabula. You can really go anywhere on the map given enough dedication, and this can really let you get in your friend's groove to bother them. Or what you can do is go ahead and spawn a bunch of monsters on the map, because spawning monsters does not end your turn. Dying is just totally fine early to mid game because you respawn. But remember, you do lose your companion Familio, so snipe off your opponents if you want to get rid of their Familio, and it's not like they get put too far behind. The game is just not that punishing overall, and even if you think you're behind in power levels, a little bit of player versus player attacking can sneak anyone a win late game. There is player elimination if you die here, but the game is practically over anyways, so not a big deal if you are slain in that last climactic battle. And all throughout the game, you can find so many ranged attacks and familial flexibility that you can alter the other hero's stuff if you want to. Frequently in Kabula, you're torn between making yourself stronger, stealing something from your opponents, or just outright killing them, which really lets all different types of approaches welcome as you can roleplay it up. We said it before, but we'll say it again. This game does run true to time. It's really 30 minutes per player, after a bit of a longer first game due to the combat intricacies and all the card play. There's frequently not that much waiting because turns tend to be snappy. There's the red actions that are crucial and people tend to gravitate towards them, such as exploring a dungeon or attacking someone. Then remember, the Herald will run out of cards, taking matter to its own hands if you take too long, or there's a nausea ramp that makes these pretty darn killable. And as we saw before with all the asymmetry, this game has amazing replay value. Not only do the characters in Herald feel completely different, that's not even accounting for all these cards in the game. There's 50 items and 20 rare items that will frequently change your strategies. There's 30 encounters and 20 dungeons in 10 dungeon cards that give you all sorts of fun flavor text. And even the location in which Familio spawn will be slightly different. For an island that doesn't physically change, everything around it and on it does, which constantly gives you a new blend of ingredients for an RPG romp. Oh, an RPG romp. Yes, we gotta talk about how this game's incredible silliness just meets the lighthearted gameplay pretty darn well. Nothing is really that punishing despite the randomness from card flips, where the flavor text is constantly telling you to have fun with it. There's Familio that can give people caffeine overdoses, which is nausea. There's even this Herald, this Floppy, the Pyro horse, who's just dancing around the map sometimes to try to impress his mate by causing fires, and you gotta play around that. The silliness just never ends, and I wish we could get more into these items because there's stuff like a chocolate donut, which you can eat to heal yourself, and it also gives you some nausea. As you go around the island all the way from Kabula Arbor, crossing rivers, through maybe the Blood Cave dungeons, all the way to the Kabula Sanctuary, your characters, your not so good humans, feel decently believable. These guys can be lazy or uncertain that is supposed to reflect the modern world that they come from. Sometimes they just want the best for their kids or want to chill out or steal from people or party on a ship, get fallen in love with and try to escape. The list goes on and on that just fits this silly journey. Like how about Zach, who just has this amusing thing where he loves to wear a headband that doesn't actually give him any benefit when he's hit in the brains. And right, attacking. Attacking has lots of flavor because it's tied to body parts. You're spending effort in the parts to use them, like stomping someone with enraged legs to power your leather boots. When you are attacked, you can expend a part to trigger a special defense. Or if the combat roll means that you got hit in a specific part, sometimes your armor protecting yourself will activate. Like how about a shield to protect your guts? This is a mystical island filled with goofs and gaffs around every corner for you to just have all these side stories. But the main story, the one with the Kabula and the Herald, will come fast. This is the tight, inevitable showdown where everyone just prepares their body parts and also all of their weapons to take down this Mexican food-loving water king, and maybe you're using poo-ridden diapers to kill it and give it nausea. And all the while, you're yelling, YOLO, because once that Kabula is taken, it is YOLO. You only live once. Haunt's time of Kabula, and we have some gripes with the learning. So let's start with this rulebook, or as the game says, guidebook. Now the stuff in here is totally fine, but it seems to be missing a lot of examples, which really makes this game a little tricky to learn, especially given how lighthearted it's supposed to be. Something we would have really wanted to see an example for is the fighting, which, well, fighting the Herald is the main part of this game, so you want to make sure you don't mess that up. The rulebook does come with a "What if I" section that's kind of like a FAQ, which is actually good, albeit it's a bit short. For more questions, it wants you to consult the glossary, which is a good idea, and hey, there's even a very wordy explanation of a type of combat here. As we're flipping through this trend of text just continues, and maybe this is a prototype woe, but we would want glossary entries to be at least shorter or have diagrams or examples. Then how about there's one part of it that references monster behavior on page 18 of the rulebook, but when you go to page 18, that's not there. We really would have wanted to see one clear separate aid that explains the following. 1. How to spawn and attack with monsters. 2. How combat roles work. 3. How to do the final battle. 4. How moving over certain terrain works. And 5. How pushing things works. That way you're not beholden to just flipping through this rulebook for these questions that come up almost every single round. Combat is the real tricky one we have to stress again. There's the differences between active and passive defense that really need to be clear, and also stuff like tanking hits for your familio if you're sharing a space with them. While we're at it, we would have wanted bigger player aids for each player. Currently, your character's special ability is tied to your setup and backstory, making it pretty easy to forget about during gameplay. Plus, we want something that clears up how trending works when you flip over the personalities, since that's a pretty unusual concept in games. Okay, so now to the gameplay cons, and we gotta start with this character progression system. So we know that you want 3 hashtags on a card to flip it over. But in order to start progressing these cards, there's only one of 2 real ways to start that journey. 1, you kill a monster with that trait, or you have to go in these dungeons or encounters and see what you get. Killing a monster is predictable, so that's okay. You can see what trait you're getting when you kill them. But if that monster just isn't accessible to you or isn't in the lineup to be spawned, you gotta rely on the card flips. Relying on a card flip to see whether or not you progress the trait you really wanted is such an RNG fest. And when this is combined with not having the right monster you need out, sometimes you just can't go down a build path you really want. Perhaps this is intentional to keep the game very streamlined, but this funnel feels bad because you get entranced by all 3 of these paths, and now you can't even start to do 2 of them. At its worst, you can stumble upon an encounter, be so starved to get these hashtags that you don't even consider the flavor because you just blindly take the decision that gives you the hashtag you need. The solution to this is actually already in the game. The front side of these cards actually have a way to progress them further once you get 1 hashtag. Something like going shopping very frequently is such a doable thing to plan for and max the card out. We would have wanted to see the front side of the personalities be active from the start, and to keep the balance, you can make certain cards have different thresholds, like changing the goal to vary between 3 to 5. The next con is also tied with the randomness with these rare items. These super strong items that you get from tier 2 dungeons or from this one special place on the map. Now, these are good. They're good. They give you a strong attack or an attack with a lot of range or multiple attacks in succession. The problem is that they're still tied to spending parts, just like normal weapons. Sometimes if you have the right parts to use this shiny rare item, you're doing really well. If you don't get the right parts to use this crazy item, you just can't use it at all, which feels really bad, especially when you get the item late. What if you really need a certain part, but none of the monsters that you can fight even get it? Sure, these rare items are worth a lot of money to resell, but then you're taking some valuable actions to go to a city and then sell the item, and sometimes you don't even get a weapon as a replacement because of how shopping always makes you draw the top cards from the deck. This does kind of tie into the lighthearted nature of the game, but even if you treat this very casually, the fact that you can draw 2 to 3 epic items, these rare items that you can't use at all, just feels bad. And then maybe you see Jessica over there be able to top deck this dangerous toothpick, which needs teeth. She started with teeth. Wow. Now she can use it. She's off to kill a bunch of monsters and get ahead, while we did a lot of work and, well, we have all these not so useful items, even though they look really cool. To make this feel less bad, we would have liked to see rare items let you spend a large amount of any parts, say 3 or 4, to do one of its abilities if you really want to. Or maybe you could have buying common items at shops be a known marketplace that is easy to predict for, so you can go to sell your rare item and see you are or aren't going to get a usable weapon out of it. For the rest of the cons, this is where the prototype elements of this game may be showing, because let's look at this. So we got these cards, right? But then let's flip them over and oh my gosh, what? And there's this token here. This is just so jarring. We normally don't like to rail on art in games, but the fact is that this looks so much different from the Heralds, or maybe the personalities, or even that board, that it just takes you out of it. Now let's get to the Heralds, where there's some errors in their wording. They frequently say to move towards a target on their attack. Okay, move how much? Does it move onto their space? We just ruled it as moving onto their space, as I'm sure that's the intent. Then this guy, the Pepazoli dude, this guy has so many abilities that work off of hashtags. Like whoever has the most hashtags gets a certain thing. But then the game literally tells you that when you hit 3 hashtags, you get rid of all your hashtags as you flip over your personality card, and then you can't gain any more. Okay, so do these people have 0 hashtags for the purposes of this card? Do they always have 3? This is weirdly punishing if they have 0 here, and in general just needs to be clarified. Then let's get a little more on iconography. The personality art is exactly the same from front to back, which can sometimes get you confused on what side is up when viewed at a glance. This doesn't have to be completely new art, but even a different border or a bright shine on the splash art would have worked. Speaking of heroes, we wish the game committed harder to the colors they gave each hero, the orange, red, green, etc., because it can be really easy to forget which color is who, especially for the familial round order. There is nothing on each hero except for their one player aid that plays to that color scheme. The game could have definitely benefited from having specific player boards that are at least paired to each player's color. Next, there is just too much tiny text in this game. The numbers for money and familial health are especially tiny. There is essentially no way you'll be able to see your opponent's stuff from across the table, which can really discourage counterplay. Oh, and the Herald and familial abilities are so tiny that you'll frequently want to pick them up to look at them, but then be careful because you typically put tokens on their cards to keep track of health. So that's a balancing minigame you have to do to not have pieces fly everywhere. Maybe even a separate card for the familial would have worked here so these tokens don't just jumble everywhere. For how big the text is in the rulebook, there really needs to be bigger text on basically every ability in this game. And then we can't forget how this Herald tracker thing, the plastic pieces just don't fit in the back for this to stay in place and spin. So we just ended up not using this front thing, just having the numbers on the board and just slowly rotate them, but I'm sure this will get cleaned up in the actual copy. For the last con, we really hope this game comes with an insert, because there are just so many little pieces for the parts, and I mean the body parts you use in this game. There has to be this many cardboard pieces because each body part does something special, but taking these in and out of plastic bags can be quite time consuming, and here's to hoping there's a pull-out tray for these. Now it's time for the nitpicks. Now, the pacing in this game can actually feel too fast sometimes. To win, you want to kill the Herald as quickly as possible as soon as you grab that Kabula, so that no one else can steal the win from you. To do this, you want a bunch of gray attacks, the ones that don't end your turn, and you can normally find these from this rare item deck. Look at that. Got one. If you're able to get these and plan for them appropriately, well then you can just go to the Herald, attack it, bam, 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 no one can stop me because it's still my turn, and then the game will end. Maybe this possibility is intentional to prevent the game from taking too long and keeping it tight. After all, there is a dice rolling element to this, so even if you think you're really strong, there's no guarantee because the Herald can protect itself, though we would argue that Zach, the guy who lets you roll 2 dice and pick one, is just too good at closing out the game if he gets the right items. Maybe his ability should just be once per turn. Kabula is a sandboxy game, so we have to really stress this is sometimes. Certain things really do have to go right to make this happen. You have to have a Herald with lower health, like Pepe or the Water King, and then you have to draw the right items, and then you also have to have the right parts left even when you walk all the way up to the center of the map to grab that Kabula. Plus, you could argue that you can see this attack coming once you're experienced with the game because all the parts and items are public knowledge. But Kabula is a casual-centered sort of game, so you're probably not scrutinizing your opponents anyways and just trying to enjoy your own romp around the island. But then when you're doing that, well, suddenly the game can just end. And you're like, wait, it just ended already? I didn't even get to use my cool ability that I was preparing for all game. What? Remember, we here at Shelfside are trying to stress test these games, finding ways to exploit them where possible, so this weird pacing is actually likely not the case for many people playing Kabula. The game is a silly, fun, lighthearted experience anyways. Just in case you get that person with the right rare card draws and that sneaky idea, here are some changes we want. 1. We would have wanted to see the gray consecutive attacks be partially or never affected by nausea, because the damage boost there can make them too strong. I know a little unthematic that some attacks just ignore nausea, but this would help. 2. How about giving the Herald more health? There can be an experience or longer game mode that gives each Herald plus 10 or plus 15 health to make them less cheesable. Okay, more nitpicks on visual stuff now. The Herald event cards are just white, just plain white on the front, and we would have liked to see at least some more graphic design done here. And then we did find it a little jarring how the encounter and monster symbols are just so much different from the intricate detailing of the island, monsters, and character splashes. This isn't as jarring as the character model art we brought up in the cons, oh god. But maybe something a little more cute, like pixel art would have worked here. The game is currently just jumping from so many art styles with high fantasy, to some old school dungeon crawler, to nightmarish Halloween cartoon, to some weird 3D modeling put on 2D. For the last nitpick, the goal of this game is to steal the Kabula tree. But then, that's weird, for all of the rampant flavor text in this game, there's actually no explanation on how you do this exactly. You're taking this giant tree, and you're getting it, and it's not slowing you down for some reason? Anyways, when we look at this box art, well, okay, that answers some of our questions. The tree is a floating tree. Why isn't that mentioned more in the flavor text? And also just have the tree art on this Kabula token be more obvious, because for most intents and purposes, it looks like a generic part token. How about a card attached to the token, giving some cool flavor text on the magical powers of this floating tree that explains some mechanics? For a game rooted in role-playing and fun romping called Kabula, the name of this tree, this central idea of the tree just doesn't feel like it has enough love to it. So come on, just give us some more flavor text. So now it's time for the tentative score of Kabula, because this is a Kickstarter prototype that's undergoing some work. So this guy is gonna get a 6 out of 10. It's tentatively above average. We do really want to warn that Kabula is just chock full of silliness. All sorts of silliness, including the explicitly weird or creepy innuendos and some not so subtle perverted things. Stuff that this box cover doesn't suggest. It kind of looks like a family game, honestly, and it kind of plays like one in some degree. You're on this cool island, you're walking around, you're killing monsters, going in dungeons. You can be fighting an aloe wolf, okay, that's fine. And then some peeping perverted snake will just come out and try to smack your butt. Or there's this guy who, when attacking people, will recto climb into them, giving them a bunch of nausea. Yeah, that can be a little unsettling. A lot of things in this game just feel like goofiness you would find in a rated M video game, like maybe Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row. So we would say, Kabula. Rated M for mature. Yeah, Kabula has satire around every single corner. It's just very proud of its 21st century themes for humor, where maybe you can run into guild members making a rap video, or there's mentions of Tinder in the rulebook lore, or even everybody was kung fu fighting. The island just promises this romp of modern tech onto a high fantasy template that is just so wacky, it is incredibly novel. There's security camera footage, fat barons, wandering swordsmen, dragons, graffiti, and so much more in these decks of cards. To keep the game going smoothly towards that main goal of grabbing the Kabula and killing the Herald, maybe the outcomes to encounters aren't incredibly nuanced though. Most will just simply help you or hurt you temporarily. Don't expect anything too deep like dialogue trees, epic quests, island altering, or multiple NPCs. And maybe leaning slightly away from adventure is for the best in Kabula because it hammers hard that its silliness is efficient just like its gameplay. The game just wants you to be thinking quickly on how to become that Herald Slayer as soon as you read your zany backstory, because really, you don't have that much time to just sandbox around. This game has an actual resource engine and an actual dangerous endgame boss, all within 30 minutes per player. That's it. So that's something that a lot of games of this silly, romping RPG genre cannot boast about. Now for player count that we haven't mentioned anywhere yet, you probably want 3 to 4 players for more interest in that final fight. You really just want more moving parts for more competition, because with 2 players, the final fight may be a little too simple for such a silly game. There's also supposedly a solo mode coming out too, which we didn't get to try, but that's exciting. But you probably don't want to try it that hard in multiplayer because some turns can just be drawing one dungeon or encounter that has randomness that can lead you astray. Or how about there's just so many familial and item abilities that it can be hard to keep track of all your opponent's things. Don't take this game too seriously, but don't slouch entirely because your actions do matter in the pacing and anyone can win. The combat will just have you planning many turns ahead to stack up the right parts and position correctly, and damage is usually guaranteed. Then micromanage your pet, the familial, and if you're that single mom, you can just have kids running around doing some work for you with Nerf guns. Maybe you just want something quick and dirty, and we mean actually pretty dirty in an adult way. Then this Kabula can clutch that spot for you, and there's going to be silly stories that happen. We're excited to see what comes next for Kabula, because this does feel like a rather early stage prototype. We didn't bring this up yet, but look at that. Art in the making. So Kabula probably has a lot more going on down the road. And if it can adapt, yeah, it definitely can be that fun, rather thoughtful romp on this magical island. And you just can't help but laugh at the absurdity of all these things and the seemingly endless cool abilities. These cards, all of these items. So many possible abilities. My personal score for Kabula is a 4 out of 10. I actually have a below average time with it. This game is just a little too over the top for me. The satire is just hammered home so hard. Remember this guy? The McYummy? He does actually crack me up when being used, but I don't know, something about it. Just seeing this in a game and moving it around, using its abilities, just makes me feel unsettled, just queasy. Maybe that's intentional. Admittedly, yes, I am cracking up, like actually laughing looking at the cards. But that is actually mostly from the shock value of the fact that such perverted items and monsters are in a game with pretty decent mechanics. Then the novelty wears off, and I'm not sure how this game's theme places in my head, as I'm actually trying hard to manage my creepy as hell items. I'm just fascinated at the efficiency of this game, combined with the never-ending stream of events, but something about it just continues to make me feel queasy. The concept of the island was never quite cemented in anything firm for me to roleplay. Some turns will inevitably just be read a bunch of wonky flavor text to get 3 money, and the prototype components just constantly lead me astray. I just don't like how these parts feel in their current state, which is a big part of the game, and that's a prototype thing I have to deal with. Or how about how the text on these being small isn't helping? I'm engaged with this game because There's a lot of cool abilities, and this part management is actually pretty fun to me. But I do get pretty tired, honestly, because there's just so much to keep track of with all these perverted abilities that I'm just having these weird, disjointed types of ideas going on in my head as I'm trying to come up with a strategy. The final boss fight here is actually reminding me of Cutthroat Caverns, a pretty scummy backstabby game. And to this degree, I just wish Kabula felt more like this, with more player interaction, maybe more player interactive items, more dangerous monsters that pose a threat so you have to work together, maybe some more player interactive events, so on and so forth. Kabula for me is like this sampler of board gaming to me with this strong, casual, cheesy twist. It has flavor text, player board management, monster killing, RPG elements, hex movement, and backstabbing potential. And I am impressed on how all of these are done in a quick package. But then maybe my hunger for each is not satisfied as I'm eating these avocado lattes in this game to heal. What even is a lot of avocado latte? Avocado latte. See, now I'm distracted from the game because of the constant satire. And then this avocado latte is fueling all my perverted items that I have to use. Anyways, when the actual version of Kabula comes out, I think my score will actually be a 5 out of 10. So let me know what you thought of Kabula. I mean, the cheesiness here reminded me a bit of Dead of Winter, but trust me, this game goes way higher than that. Anyways, thanks to our patrons for making videos like this possible. We got Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Bora, Jeremy M, C, Charlie P, Quinton S, MS, Travis R, Evan Y, Von K, Ryan D, Jennifer L, Brett M, Mac G, Peter Z, Spinner 71, and Ryan J, Brad G, Tiamo, period, Mark A, James M, Evan B, Charles B Jr., Josh J, Basketball, Rado, Sophie, Reiner Z, Colin Allen, Hudson T, Pearson B, Omar F, MY, Ethan P, Bradley J, John C, Galvin V, Dirk S, Andy C, X Co, Alex L, Rob R, Sendo 2020, Sendo 22, Dave F, and Josh R. We also got two Mad Lads cardboard. We got ZL and Jeff L. We got this guy right there. And we also got our Mad Lady cardboard. We got Amy. So let me know what types of games you want me to review next, and I'll see you guys later. Remember to drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Bye-bye. Kabula.